Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Friday, September 5th, shortly before the Toronto Blue Jays start their pivotal series in the Bronx against New York Yankees. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. We are back after a short delay. We've both kind of been under the weather for the past week, kind of preventing this episode from getting recorded, but we are resilient, if nothing else, and we will grind through this episode today. But Jory, how are you feeling? One, how are you feeling? And two, how are you feeling about this Blue Jays series against the Yankees coming up here?
You know what? I think the people are probably a little more interested in the Blue Jays than
That is false. They're
lingering
100%
my
want to know how
lingering
you are
cough.
doing.
But yes, exciting that the Blue Jays here have a enormous series against the New York Yankees. That might even be an understatement. Series of the year. I feel like that's probably a safe thing to say, especially, last episode we called it the series of the year, but this one,
We
I'm
only
thinking
record before a series of the year.
exactly at this point, right? So looking forward to our game one recording next time around. No, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be a really fun one. Jays, Yankees, battle for the American League East. What more can you ask for?
Three-game lead for the Blue Jays. Obviously, Blue Jays fans can rest their heads on the pillow at night, knowing that no matter what happens this series, they will still be in first in the AL East, even if they get swept, thanks to
Tiebreaker.
the tiebreaker. So, I mean, the pressure is kind of on the Yankees for this series. Obviously, if you're the Blue Jays, it would behoove them to perform well and continue to play the Yankees tough and, put a little bit of a dent into the Yankees' hopes here because, the Yankees schedule once again is a little bit easier than the Blue Jays the rest of the way. So, it's certainly not, oh, even if we get swept, we're going to be okay. Because if you get swept, then you're going to be probably in a little bit of trouble, even if, you wake up Monday morning still in first place in the division. So, it's going to be a heck of a series. The Yankees obviously are playing a lot better recently. Some of that does come from the ease of their schedule where they, beat up on the White Sox and the Nationals and, kind of rode that momentum into their Astros series where they came away with the win. But, it's a good baseball team, the Yankees. So I don't think that they were going to play kind of that brand of baseball that they played in Toronto, for most of the season. But, they certainly do have their weaknesses as we have seen. So, um, before we kind of get into the Jays, I mean, what do you kind of expect to see from the Yankees specifically? I think that's going to be an interesting, um, a litmus test for them to see which team shows up.
Yeah, no, this will be an intense series. I think that's the word I would use. Yankees are going to be ramping up the intensity for sure. You look at, the series back in July. Yankees were booting the ball all over the place. Tough couple of games from them defensively. And we were seeing all these clips from John Boy and from all these fans across Twitter, Yankees fans, all having their meltdowns. And, you know, Blue Jays fans, I'm sure, were loving every minute of it. But certainly it would seem that the pressure, the scrutiny is going to be much higher. Now, the Yankees, not exactly the cleanest squad in baseball, even in their game against the Astros, three errors yesterday. They were booting the ball all over the place. Also, worth noting again, Yankees did play yesterday. In theory, Jays should be coming into this fresh, should be able to take game one just based on the fact that they were already in New York and able to rest and this,
Did
that, and
you
the
did
other.
you see
But
the tweet from Ashley Rodone this morning?
did not catch that. But I'm sure it
Um,
had something to do with everyone being all amped up and fired up, I'm assuming.
no,
I'm hoping it's not that.
it is not that, unfortunately. The tweet read, I'll pull it up here. She said, Los, so Carlos Rodon, walking in the door from Houston, handshake emoji, me waking up to get the kids ready for school. So the Yankees obviously getting in very late this morning. You know, and then kind of complaining a little bit about the schedule. But
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it's professional baseball. Welcome to the life.
welcome to the show. Yeah, I mean, that should help the Jays in theory. Obviously, Rodon is not going to be pitching. But I mean, like I said, kind of sets the Jays up nicely in terms of opportunity, at least for game one. You've got Gosman on the hill. That's obviously helpful, if nothing else. Jays don't have a lot on Schlittler, obviously, but, still a rookie, still a kid. And we'll see if the Jays can get to him. But, I'm really kind of eyeing this Friday night ball game as one that you really want to see how the Jays are able to take advantage because this is a big series. And it's a real tone setter, I think, tonight. Again, the Yankees as well, like I was saying, defensively, they're going to have to sharpen things up. They will, I would imagine, prioritize that kind of stuff. But for the Jays, it's going to be a lot more of the same. You got to play the Yankees tough. You got to make the Yankees do the stuff they're not comfortable doing. And that'll be the key to success, not only tonight, but the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun too. I mean, both sides lining up, a playoff rotation esque group. It's Gosman, Scherzer, and Bassett against Schlittler, Heel, and Fried. So I mean, obviously you miss out on Bieber and Rodon. So probably I guess the Blue Jays best pitcher and the Yankees second best pitcher. But those that's it's still no slouches there in that group. It's going to be some really important high level pitching for both teams, considering, how the bullpens have been performing for each squad. I know the Yankees obviously have been having their Devin Williams issues, and the Blue Jays have kind of been having their bullpen issues, and we talked a little bit about it last episode, and I think we can probably get into, some of the Blue Jays specifics here, where the bullpen has been, the second worst in the second half in baseball by ERA. And in that Cincinnati series, I don't think they did a ton to kind of quell those concerns. There was a couple performances where, again, Tommy Nance gets a chance for a save, blows it. Brennan Little comes in, gives up the go-ahead hit, and then really in that series, I think was like Jeff Hoffman, the best performing guy out of the bullpen.
I mean, I feel like it's just kind of been more of the same. And it should be noted, Shai Davidi came on Sportsnet Central last night and kind of spoke about how this is kind of a similar bullpen to last year, even though, recently it certainly hasn't felt that way. But, a series like this, it all gets magnified. It all becomes all that more important to be able to lock this stuff down. I do want to just very quickly go back to you mentioning the starters that they're going to be facing. And the Jays obviously missing Rodon is huge. And Fried has not been the same pitcher in the second half as he was, a Cy Young contender in the first. He's got an ERA of nearly 4.5 in the second
He's
half.
been good
So
his last three though, like kind of bounced back from the last, but he's also been bad against the Jays. So I mean, who knows?
it remains to be seen. I think the crux of it, right? You really, you can't look that far ahead. That's game three. Start with game one, maybe move on to game two after that. But again, just to me, the bullpen obviously, like you kind of said, it's gonna have to be a key part of them keeping the Yankees at bay. The thing to me that's gonna really be worth keeping an eye on, the walk rate obviously has been well discussed, is ballooning to say the least. And the Yankees are a team that crushes mistake pitches and takes a lot of stuff. They walk a lot. The Yankees, of all teams, are pretty well equipped to take advantage of a bullpen right now that's struggling. Now, mind you, the Blue Jays, to their own credit, also are probably well equipped in different ways, but similarly to take advantage of a Yankees bullpen that's also sputtering a bit here and there. So hard to say exactly whose whose bullpen is in a worse spot
Yeah.
against the corresponding team. But getting to whoever's the starter for either side
Yeah.
clearly going to be a really important part of the narrative, how this series ultimately does play out.
Blue Jays bullpen in Cincinnati, one walk. Can you guess which reliever issued the walk?
Is it Brendan Little?
It's not actually. He came in and gave up two hits and got one out
Is
in
it
that
Jeff
first game.
Hoffman?
No, it's return of a old friend.
Old friend. Is it Dylan Tate?
No, older
Ian.
friend, new again.
Older.
Lefty.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Ryan Baraki. That would make some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an experiment. Um,
Well,
I don't imagine you're going to be seeing too much Ryan Baraki against the Yankees.
yeah. Well, I mean, they do have, a pretty hefty group of lefties. So I actually think that we are going to see some Ryan
Well,
Baraki in this series,
but
because
you
I
got
would
to figure
imagine,
Brendan Little gets most of those
yeah, no,
starts.
100%. I think, Little, you're still running him out in those situations. I think we're likely to see Braden Fisher get the recall today, probably in the next, few hour or so here, and it'll probably be a swap with Dylan Tate there, and then even hey, Eric Lauer, I know he's there for some length and some ability to kind of pop in if a starter struggles, but I wouldn't mind seeing him in the seventh inning against Bellinger, Grisham, giving him a shot like that, especially if your choices are Brendan Little and Ryan Barucki at this point. Um, but let's move on. You mentioned the offense. I mean, unless you have any other last thoughts on the bullpen, like we've gone over it again. Bullpens are bullpens. This bullpen has been bullpenning extremely hard. Um, and I just, on a concern level, like I'm a little more concerned about it this week than I was, a couple weeks ago. But I think, it's still the first week of September. If this group is still in this condition on September 25th, then that's kind of when the alarm bells will be going off for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, the word around the team is kind of that this is just a bit of a volume thing, a bit of a stamina thing, and it's just a long season, and guys start to wear down over the course of a year. Brendan Little is like the perfect example of that, going from a superstar first half to a less so second. To me, I think that again, big part of the series is going to be the starting pitching,
Yeah.
ironically, because of the relievers. If you
The,
can not only for the Jays, if they're able to get their starters, to go deep in ball games to protect the bullpen, but also just to save them from some wear and tear, I think as well. And something that's going to accumulate over the next couple of weeks, even, right? You look at like the Bieber start from Wednesday, and he obviously has that tough second inning, but beyond that, kind of does his job and goes. I believe it was. Did he pitch it in the sixth inning? I know he definitely went five.
he went
He went,
six, yeah.
yeah. So same idea. Like gets you where you need him to get you to protect the bulk of your bullpen, right? So to me, and then obviously the day off, I'm sure doesn't hurt either, and they have another day off
Yeah.
coming up as
On
well,
Monday.
right?
Yeah.
So the ability to keep the bullpen fresh down the stretch here is going to be really important, and they're going to have to stack a couple of these extended outings from starters, at least in my estimation.
Yeah, it's going to be I think Gosman has none of the Jays trio there has like fared especially well against the Yankees this season. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. I think obviously Gosman has kind of been, up and down lately. Bassett has been, I think Bassett does like this weird thing where he gives up runs early and then kind of like locks it down and competes the rest of the way. That's not like a quantifiable thing. Like that's just kind of an eye test thing. And then Scherzer obviously coming off the back injury. Hopefully the health is there for him because his first start against the Yankees was really good, and then the second one was not as good. So, those are veterans who we've seen step up before, and I'm sure that the adrenaline will certainly be flowing for them. But let's move on to the offense because obviously, since Cincinnati, big story is the offense coming through, putting up a ton of runs, helping out the pitching staff. And nobody has kind of been swinging it quite like George Springer. We've talked a lot about him this year, but the way he's performed in the second half, I mean, he's the best hitter by WRC plus with 100 plate appearances in the second half this year. He's like the third, like top five in baseball by OPS this year. It's just been insane what has gone on with George Springer, considering the conversations that we were having about him entering the season. And now all of a sudden we are in a point where he's going to get MVP votes. We were kind of discussing, I think it was yesterday,
Well, that's what I actually wanted to bring up
about
is
where he might finish. But
let's do a little bit of a game here, actually. Do you think George Springer ends up a top three MVP finisher? And if not, how far down are you willing to go with him? Because I'm not really too sure I'm willing to go much further than like a top five finish.
I
Obviously you've got Raleigh Judge, but beyond those two,
I
we'll
mean,
see.
I think top five is reasonable. I think you look at last year's MVP ballot, and it almost read off one for one with where guys finished with where they ranked in the F War standings. So in the American League, George Springer is currently 12th in F War. But, I mean, the guy has a 164 WRC plus, which is higher than Cal Raleigh at this point, right? So I think, what you're looking at is it's going to be Judge 1, Raleigh 2. Bobby Witt has been coming on like crazy. I think he's pretty firmly going to be third. But I think when you look at who you're going to vote for fourth, currently Jeremy Pena has 5 F WAR and he's fourth, but what's the difference between 5 F WAR and 4.1? Like it's not a huge difference there, right? So I think when you look at the offensive contribution that Springer has had to the best team in the American League, then I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish fourth, realistically.
I just wonder if there will be, because you were talking about basically a one-to-one war sort of.
There's like this weird like
I
group
just feel
think
like
thing with
you look
war,
at
right?
you, but you look at like his WRC plus, and that is like, to me, in the age of, and this is a crazy comp, so forgive me for this, but in the age of the full-time DH Shohei Ohtani, and obviously that's not the case anymore, but in the age of full-time DH MVP Shohei Ohtani, I just, to me, I feel like there's there's enough precedent now that you can be a full-time DH that is crushing baseballs. And obviously Otani stole bases like it was no one else's business. And there was other stuff he brought to the table. But you can be a full-time DH and be an MVP. And to me, I don't see why Springer doesn't deserve at least some love.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I'm saying that he is going to get some love by finishing
But
fourth.
no, but you're saying that he ranks 12th in F War, so
Yeah.
you think he'll end up top five?
I think so. I think when you look at it, right, like the group, so it's I mean, Judge Rally Wit are pretty like far and above everybody else from that standpoint. And like I said, there's like this weird like kind of groupthink thing where I do think that, sometimes maybe voters are like, I'm just gonna vote the war leaderboard, right? Which I mean is fair in a way, but also, like when you're looking at the difference between like 4.1 F war and like 4.4 F war, like there's enough margin of error in there that you can kind of
They're
as an
almost the same.
individual, like kind of
They're almost the same.
evaluate it, right? Like it's 4 wins. It's a 4 win season. So, you can kind of pick who you think is the best out of that. And um yeah, I think, I think fourth is perfectly reasonable. And, if I were to have an MVP vote today, I would probably put George Springer fourth on that group.
Yeah, I think like it's either him. I know J Ram's gotten a bit of love as well.
Yeah.
He's just J Ram being J Ram, but
I think the Shohei thing too, it's an interesting comp, but I mean also Shohei last year was like a 9 win player
yeah.
as a
No,
DH, and
I
Springer's probably going to
recognize,
be like a 5.
yeah, like I recognize the difference in the quality of those two players. You know
I
what,
mean, no,
Tay?
I mean that's it's no hate to Springer. Like, dude has been insane. Like one of the
Well,
best Blue Jays
what I
offensive
think
seasons ever. Like
what
it's
I think is super fascinating, like this is better. It's better than Donaldson's MVP season in terms of I think WRC plus. But what I think is super interesting is the way that this changes the prognosis for the team next year too. And this is getting ahead of things a little bit, but you go from this is a guy you need to dump
yeah.
to this is a key cog in this team next year.
You
So
go from
30.
this is a guy you need to dump to what are we going to do with him and Santander in the same lineup?
I mean, the Jays are gonna have to make that decision soon. Let's actually talk Santander. I know that we're skipping over a couple things in the rundown here, but
Yeah.
since you've brought him up, Santander stuff sounds like there's
A rehab assignment
pathway.
on Tuesday is what they're targeting, it sounds like. So
Like it sounds like there's a path to him playing ball games for the big league club. Like a pretty clear, pretty obvious one.
yeah, so I mean, let's run it down, right? So if he gets back, so they said rehab assignment potentially starting in Buffalo on Tuesday, and they would want him to play 5 rehab games. So, let's say he does that, starts Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so that would be 5 games. I would guess that he would, if everything goes well during those rehab games, they would give him Sunday off to recover, whatever, and then he would meet the team in Tampa for that series against the Rays.
That's right. And it makes
And
sense too. I mean, he's gonna, well, I guess actually he'll probably be rehabbing in Buffalo. I was gonna say he's gonna be rehabbing in Florida, but that's not gonna be the case.
um so then that would give you 2 weeks of him on the roster, on the major league roster.
He's gonna have to hit the ground running, man. This is gonna be super fascinating.
It's so tight. It's so
If
tight.
he hits the ground running though, wow, does that change this team to a like 40 home run power is 40 home run power, and recognize that, the start to the year was abysmal. But if he can find it, wow, does that change the prognosis of this team?
Yeah, it's I mean it's tough to be like, oh, he's gonna come back and like completely, but I mean when you look at the way that this lineup is built, like there's a nice little spot for him right in the middle of the order. You put him right behind Bo. Like it's an impact bat.
Does
And this
does
is a
he
guy
just
that
play
you
left field
spent.
at this point though? Like, where does he play?
I think the fact that Springer has been getting some time out there recently, like that's probably not an accident. I think that there's probably some, hey, our best offensive lineup is going to be Springer and left, Santander at DH, Varsho, Barger, whatever concoction you want to put on the infield around Vlad and Bo. And then, you DH Santander. I think, for me personally, I'd probably rather Springer and left than Santander and left. I know the defensive metrics have been like awful for Springer this year,
It's picking
but
between two full-time DHs.
yeah, yeah. So
Well, you know
the
what's funny is that all of a sudden, Ty France's existence, although he's been a very productive member of the Blue Jays, suddenly you kind of need first base right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really curious to see how that rehab stint goes and what that'll look like. They're in Rochester, which so it's not in Buffalo, which is, probably less than ideal for them, but
They're
yeah,
right down the
well,
road. You got to figure like close enough.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I didn't quite consider the geography of New York when I thought about that, but um yeah, like any concerns for you? Like to me, I think it's a huge upside play. You're going to be likely in a playoff spot, so you have like that 2 week window to see what he's got and see where he is.
Well, it's a question of if you're going to have the time based on or the runway based on a first round bye, and that's another
Yeah,
place where this series becomes all of a sudden becomes all that more important.
yeah.
Because I'm not sure how much you really want to test the waters with Anthony Santander if you're trying to make up ground on a suddenly resurgent Yankees squad.
Yeah. It's gonna be so interesting. Like, I mean, I think that we kind of laid it out a couple weeks ago, or even maybe me or more recently than that, and said, that he needed probably 2 weeks to of major league time to kind of see where he's at. And that's where it's kind of lining up to be. So I think any setback for him during those 5 days of rehab, or if his rehab starts later than that, then you're kind of getting into the territory of is that going to be enough time for him to get back up to speed against major league pitching from both sides of the plate? I do wonder like if they maybe are like, hey, let's just have you be a lefty and we'll only use you against righties or something like that. But I mean, again,
Well, it
that's
sounds like this his left-handed swing is the one that's kind of
that's
moved
been
along better.
better, yeah. So I
Like to
wonder if that's a
me,
consideration for them at all.
uh, it you would think it probably would be, right? At the end of the day, you want this guy as at the bare minimum an option, right? Like his upside, no disrespect to the options the Blue Jays have on the bench, but this guy's upside blows everybody else's out of the water.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, how many guys on this roster have 40 home run seasons under their belt? Like Vlad?
And I think that about sums it up.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I mean, those first few games are going to be really, really important for him. So we'll
I
kind of see how that plays out.
I want to ask you actually then, because just to kind of dig a little more, just a tiny bit more, because I don't want to go too deep on Santander. Obviously, we want to get to a few other things. Um, can you give me, in your estimation, maybe like a 90th percentile outcome, a 50th percentile outcome, and like a 10th percentile outcome here?
You
10th is
mean,
obviously gets hurt, doesn't even play, like the
yeah,
rehab stuff. Maybe that's worst percentile, first percentile, but like doesn't play or like really struggles in Buffalo. That's obviously worst case scenario. But those upside scenarios, the 50th percentile, what do you see?
I think 50th. You can feel free to just disagree with me. I think 50th he comes back and is like just fine. Like he's in the lineup, but he's like, probably a little bit better than he was before he went on the IL. Maybe, probably like a league average bat, like hits like 200, but has a couple big home runs down the stretch, something like that. 50th, 90th. comes back, is like the 128 WRC plus guy that he was last year, hits like 5 home runs over the last 2 weeks, and pushes the Blue Jays to the bye to the division title. Like that's probably the best outcome for them. But I mean, what do you think realistic outcome is? Let's say
Realistically,
realistic outcome in the world where he is back in the lineup on September 15th against the Rays.
well, that changes the caveat there because I think the most realistic outcome is this guy comes back and we see more of the same we saw earlier the year, which is maybe pessimism, but until proven otherwise. I don't know. I think my hope is, we've seen all this positive development over the year with everybody really. With the David Popkins approach has saved so many people. It'd be real nice if he could save Santander, as
Yeah.
we so described it a couple of months ago. God, it was back in like May. Um, like I do think that 200 hitter that is like fine off the bench. Uh, at that point, honestly, I don't even think he's on my playoff roster if that's what you're looking at. And if that's a 50th percentile outcome, I don't think that it's you know, I don't think he factors in. I want to give him more credit than that. I feel like there was not necessarily bad luck to start, but just it was enough of an aberration to me that it didn't make very much sense. Plus, he played a little bit hurt towards the end of his
Yeah.
time. You know what? I just you gotta figure that there's something to tap into somewhere. I'm not sure where. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure exactly. But I think it would be really shocking, really stunning if he came back and was like a Mendoza line guy that only popped like one or two bombs.
Let me final sense Santander thing. So let's say he comes back, plays the last 2 weeks out, hits like 210 with 2 homers. WRC plus is like 88 over the final 2 weeks, but the Blue Jays get the bye and get the week, or get the few days off. Is he on your playoff roster?
It's just hard to see a universe that makes sense. If he's a pretty well below average DH hitter, it's hard to he's got to be at least above league average while he's up in those 2 weeks for me to have him be a consideration for my playoff roster. I think that if you're looking at anything below like a 95 WRC plus, thank you for the time, Mr. Santander. Go enjoy October baseball from the comforts of Dunedin and come back with a fully functioning shoulder for 2026, which would suck for obvious reasons. You were really banking on this guy being a contributor. And I don't think it's impossible he comes back and is a contributor, but he has to come back and hit the ground running for him to be a factor because the Jays just have so many options that have a higher floor than what Anthony Santander can provide.
Yeah, it'll be man, what a what a wild turn of events that the Santander signing has taken, from, the struggles to the injury taking this long to him potentially being back. Like what a turn.
And
Um
and just last thing, I
yeah.
promise. I mean, this could be like a Kyle Schwarber thing. I know I think it was Buck that tossed it out. That's
Yeah.
that's probably like 105th percentile outcome.
World
But
Series MVP
it's
Anthony
not
Santander.
not unprecedented for a guy to come back that's a pure slugger to come back and slug.
Yeah,
Especially
I
if he's not
mean,
worried about playing any
it's
defense.
what he's done his whole life, so maybe the health will be good for him. Let's do another, kind of on the edge of the roster conversation. And Trey Savage, he pitches out of the bullpen for the second time this year. The other day at AAA Buffalo, throws 3 innings. I thought it was the best that he's looked in Buffalo. I mean, if you look at his zone percentage from all of his outings, it was by far his highest. He was in the zone. He was attacking. To me, it was the best that we've seen him in a Bison's jersey. And 6 strikeouts, 3 innings. Curious that they only had him go 54 pitches when kind of the expectation was that he was going to be around 80. But I mean, they've clearly setting him up to at least have the option of bringing him up at some point. Um, and just to clear it up too, I mean, I know there's a lot of confusion around it, but he would be postseason eligible. The Blue Jays would just have to clear, basically what's a formality, with the commissioner's office. Like it's been granted to so many players, Jackson Jobe, Francisco Alvarez. Like we see it all the time happen. And so he would be able to pitch in the postseason if that happens. They have injured players that they would be able to replace him with. So, I mean, like I think just the fact that they made the move to the bullpen, they kind of bit that bullet, and he performed well in that. And I'm assuming that, this is something that we've seen from him, right? Like he's come out at every new level, kind of struggled right away, and then got his feet under him, pitched really well. So I'm assuming that his next couple outings in Buffalo are going to go well. But they would need to go well for him to be an option for the Blue Jays down the stretch.
Should we do the Savage meter?
Yeah, I've been sitting here ever since his outing, trying to think of what my number is. And so where did we end at? I think
I went
you were
down.
at
I went from 30 to
to
20.
20, and I think I was at 20 as well.
I think we were both around that. But now all of a sudden this start has completely changed things for you. I don't know if it has for me. Now,
I
mind you, a lot of that had to do with some miscalculations in terms of where he fits on the roster. But I'll let you, because to me, you are our resident You Savage expert.
so
Like give
so
me the lowdown.
so do we think this is playoff roster percentage or just pitches in the majors percentage? Because I think
Let's
that's two different calculations.
Yeah, and I do think that this is like September, called up during September. The
Yeah.
chances we see him this year. I think that's what
I
we've been going with.
I think 40% is a decent number. I still think it's less likely to happen than it is likely to happen, obviously. So that's, 40%. But I think, what, you make the move to the bullpen. He's thrown well. If they have like locked down a playoff spot in the final week or whatever, like I could see them giving him a chance to pitch, right? Like you're trying to save your arms, whatever, give him kind of that final taste of major league action to cap off his year, which has obviously been really excellent. But the postseason thing, like there would have to be a specific need for it, right? Like there would need to be probably a couple injuries to open up a spot, and they would like need to kind of have this guy who can pitch, medium leverage innings. I don't think we're looking at him as a setup man. We're not looking at him as a closer, no matter how much everybody wants either him or Alek Manoah to replace the closer. But I think that there is an advantage with him, being such a uncomfortable at bat for major league hit or for hitters in general, that if he were to come up, like it would be something new that major league hitters have never seen. So he would kind of have that advantage on them with his stuff and the way that he throws, where I think that he would have a good chance of being effective. But then also you do have to calculate in the fact that he has been, shaky at every promotion, right? So is he going to come up in his first major league outing and walk the world and then have to be removed early and whatever. So I think if he were to be on the postseason roster, he would need time in the major leagues. Which again, if they're in a postseason race, I don't think that he's getting that shot unless that need opens. I think the most likely scenario is they've clinched and he comes up and pitches kind of in that last series, whether it be as a starter, reliever, whatever role they need him in. So that's why I put it at 40%. Like just I think that there's a chance. They just kind of need to find the need. But as far as like postseason, or we're in the final game of the season and we need to win to win the AL East, I don't think he's getting that shot.
You're thinking at this point it's a bit of a he gets Wes Parsons, it seems like.
Yes, but but everybody's excited about it.
The most exciting Wes Parsons start of all time, featuring Trey Savage. I think I'm hovering around 20 still.
Yeah.
You kind of outlined it there that it's hard to find a spot to really slot him in. And I think when you start to get into that discussion, it starts to become a case of, okay, is the upside of having him pitch in low to medium leverage very briefly to end September as high as potentially keeping him down, letting him finish off the year in AAA, be like, we're really happy, finish off the year strong in AAA, have a strong end to the season, go back beginning of next year, pitch a month maybe in Buffalo just to get used to maybe like starting the year on time in Buffalo, getting like a starter's workload for the jump, and then coming up to the big leagues. Maybe, I think back to when they had Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez. Marcus Stroman makes his debut for the Jays out of the bullpen in like May. And I wonder if that's more, and that's obviously for forever ago, right? And you've obviously got the Manoa stuff happened since then, and COVID year kind of makes that a little weird. But nevertheless, when we're talking about, prospects that the Jays have had, starting pitching prospects of this caliber, to me, you just the benefits are starting to tip the scales of having him wait a little longer as opposed to getting him up to pitch as, I kind of outlined it before we hit the record button. Realistically, behind Hoffman, behind Varland, behind Sir Anthony Dominguez, isn't a lefty, so kind of behind Brendan Little. And I'm sure there's others that realistically he's going to end up behind as well.
I mean, yeah, I mean, when you're looking at it, like what would be the scenario for him to for the Blue Jays to have a need for him, right? And the way that their bullpen is set up right now, we mentioned Braden Fisher is going to be coming back probably for Dylan
There's
Tate.
another one that's going to be ahead of him on the depth
Yeah,
chart.
and then Fluharty probably comes back for Bareki. So, when you're looking at your postseason bullpen, I would imagine it's Hoffman, Dominguez, Yariel, Nance, Little, Varland, Fluharty, Fisher, and then, insert whichever starting pitchers you want to kind of toss into that group there, right? So the need for you Savage would obviously, we're not accounting for a starting appearance for him, we're accounting for him out of the bullpen. So I think it would be, a Nance injury or, a right-handed pitcher injury, right? So whether that's any of those righties there. And then you're weighing Dylan Tate versus Trey Savage, essentially for the playoff roster. And there's a number of guys also kind of on the periphery of that conversation in Buffalo, whether it be like a Joe Mantiply, obviously, in this scenario, Ryan Barucki would be in there. Um,
Adam
whichever,
Acko, maybe
yeah,
even.
Adam Macko, interesting kind of lefty. He's been good out of the bullpen. You know, if they decide to move like a Barrios or a Bassett to the bullpen in the playoffs, like that's kind of in the mix too. So I would say for Savage, it would be interesting to me, like if they were like Barrios, obviously he struggled in Cincinnati again, and if he kind of continues to struggle down the stretch here, and if they were IL'd him and we're kind of like, you're not going to be on our playoff roster, so we're just going to bring Trey Savage on our playoff roster, but he's not going to pitch, kind of thing, like that would maybe like. But
Don't even know if
again,
that
like
makes sense.
what's the worth in doing
No,
that?
no
So
reason
like
really.
honestly, like I would maybe bring him to the playoffs and just be like, hey, come hang out in the dugout kind of thing, like no hurt in that. But yeah, I think you're looking at you need an injury to a right-hander, and then you need you Savage to be like overwhelmingly dominant in AAA to prove that he's a better option than Dylan Tate. And once again, he would need time in the major leagues to kind of show that he is ready to adjust to that
Yeah,
again.
and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head here, right? That's why to me, you're looking, again, less than 50, but for you, I think even 40. It feels a little high, but I do understand that you've kind of got the caveat of like an end of season
Yeah,
spot start, which to me, I just feel like there's mixed value to
yeah,
that.
yeah. Fun conversation though. It's every one of his outings,
Well,
I
it's
guess
fine. You
at this
got two
point.
guys. You got him. You got Santander
Yeah,
as like levers to pull.
Alec
And you
Manoa.
don't. Sure, if you want to pull that third lever, be my guest. I don't know if you're familiar with the Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah.
Rock.
Yeah. That one.
Anyways,
Do we want? I don't want to run. We just ran through the scenarios for your Savage to come up, but the scenarios for Manoa to come up, we would be maybe here for 50 more minutes. Um, oh man, honestly like I think the whole Savage situation is so interesting because he's at 94 innings on the season, right? So I kind of wonder what the total that they want him to be at on the year is because he threw 93 last year at East Carolina and he's thrown 94 this year, but of course, those are like pretty stressful innings, I would say, because he's done it on so many different levels. He's had so much different travel, like
they're not the same 94 innings that they
yeah,
were last year.
100%. So I think he's probably got 15 more innings in him for the year
Yeah.
around
Yeah, that
there.
sounds like a right ball. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then that moves him next year to like 140-ish, gets him
Yeah.
into kind of the starters workload.
Yeah. We'll see. Will be fun to monitor. He's been so awesome this year and such a great story. And Um, they just nailed that pick. Like what a great pick to kind of put yourself in a great position to have this guy who's ready to contribute at the major league level like ASAP, which is really cool.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
Do you have anything else on this Blue Jays team? I know we kind of had, the IKF sign or claim on here, Bo Bichette and his huge second half as well. Like those guys have been, or Bo specifically has been really good. Give me an IKF thought.
All right. I think for me, the IKF stuff, I kind of tweeted out, old friend, why? And IKF sounds like good vibes. Everyone's kind of talking about he feels such joy to be back in the Blue Jays clubhouse. I mean, I would too if I was going from the Pittsburgh Pirates to a team hunting down a potential playoff bye. And it makes sense. They didn't necessarily have a super utility guy to bring up for that 27th, 28th man spot. He fills a lot of those holes in terms of the flexibility that maybe others might not have provided. The Jays got a lot of value out of him last year, and as a pending free agent, there's not a lot of downside. I guess to me, as long as you can kind of keep his usage in check, I think it makes sense. I guess I would be a little fearful of him getting regular starts. He's already gotten at least one. Um, to me, it's a bit of a wait and see. Sounds like a good dude. Fun guy to have around. Makes sense to have around. Leader in the clubhouse. This, that, and the other. Comfortable with the team. Familiar with the team. But let's see how he gets used over the next couple weeks and into the playoffs. Because to me, this seems like a guy they're probably going to end up with on their playoff roster. And I would just be curious, you know, is this a situation where he takes like Davis Schneider's spot, and then they have Anthony Santander in the picture now, and you bring him in as your kind of righty masher, and all of a sudden you've left Davis Schneider in his 130 WRC plus or whatever it is since his recall. You leave that at home, feeling like a bit of an unforced error. I don't know. So I feel like there's some machinations that are gonna have to play out before we know for sure exactly what IKF's acquisition means to this team. It's been a week. It's been, a little while, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's given them, a little bit extra flexibility, and I think that was kind of the goal, right? Like we obviously saw them take Jimenez out of the game. They pinch hit for Jimenez with a lead, and so you take your platinum glover out of the lineup, and then but IKF, him
You
and
bring in your
Ernie,
gold glover instead.
yeah. So it's I kind of like it from that standpoint. I wonder, same thing, how many at bats he's going to get. I don't think that it'll be that many because once again, um, this is a guy with a 74 WRC plus on the year and a guy who, he had a 117 as a Blue Jay last year when they traded them and then immediately put up a 61 in Pittsburgh after, which I think we promptly called on this podcast at that time. Not to toot our own horn, but I mean, I think anybody could have looked at his batted ball profile and made a similar prediction. But
Assessment.
yeah, so I think, what are we talking about here? Like, are we talking about like 20 at bats or are we talking about like 50 at bats, right? Like it's a pretty big difference. So I would imagine that he's there kind of for that defensive flexibility. And to me, that's fine. Initially, it was kind of like, same boat, like why do you do this? But I think when you look at the guys, excuse me, in AAA, Loperfido's been struggling, so kind of get it from that standpoint. And
Seems like he might even be hurt. I know he's been scratched a couple
yeah,
of times.
yeah. He did. It looked like kind of tweak an oblique or something like that. So we'll kind of monitor that. But like IKF or Michael Stefanik for that last spot, kind of fine with it being IKF at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. I think that's about right. Also worth noting, because of the way that rotations shrink during the playoffs, you kind of add an additional bat almost. Normally you get either a 3 or a 4 man rotation. I don't know
Yeah.
what way the Jays would lean. I kind of assume it would be three because there's three obvious ones, but feels like there's probably likely going to be four. But I feel like if you're able to kind of kick one of those guys to the bullpen, and then that lets you move a guy down, and you keep your 8-man bullpen, and then you move to a 12-man pitching staff. Let's see, maybe add a. There's enough machinations.
Yeah.
You can make it work.
All right. Final thing, I wanted to do like just a quick prospect minute because some interesting stories developing recently. My August farm report went up this morning, so if you're so inclined, check that out on our Substack. But I kind of wanted to highlight Gage Stanifer because I think he's a guy we've talked a little bit about on this podcast, but not a whole bunch. He's a guy who was kind of buried early in the season by the Savage, by Cal Steven, and then kind of in the middle of the season by like Jerron Watts Brown and Kendry Rojas. And well, Steven, Rojas, Watts Brown are all traded now. So Stanifer has been kind of pumped up the system. I think MLB Pipeline has him as like a top five prospect in the Jays system. And, he's a guy that I was a little bit skeptical about as his career progressed in Vancouver. But the way that he has pitched like the last month and a half, like I'm a believer, like full in on Stanifer now as a future potential starter. Like, dude has just taken a huge leap with his command, taken a huge leap with his ability to pitch deep into games. I think he has more strikeouts than Trey Savage on the year now at this point, and he earned a promotion to Double A recently, and like very well deserved. I think his starts at Double A. I mean, I wrote this, but I think like if he pitches the same way that he has been, I think he's going to fare pretty well at Double A as well.
I mean, to me, like you had said, goes back a couple weeks now. I was kind of like give Stanford his love, and you were kind of like, well, the numbers aren't so pretty. Kind of looks like a reliever. Seems like that's no longer the case.
No, I mean, yeah, like I like fully the way that he is pitched, like it's the command obviously was an issue before this year, and then he kind of I don't want to say like necessarily like quite figured it out in low A, but he
He
was just
cleaned
so
it up. He
he was
cleaned it
so
up.
overwhelmingly dominant in Dunedin that he earned that promotion to Vancouver, and then his first few times out in Vancouver, I mean, you're looking at five walk outings. He's only throwing a couple innings at a time, and then but like just the way that he kind of flipped the corner and turned the corner, excuse me, and was able to kind of he racked up a ton of strikeouts like everywhere, but he limited hits. He's only allowed two home runs on the season. And the way that he's, just attacked the strike zone and like watching him pitch is actually like so enjoyable. Like he is on the max level or Max Scherzer level of quick and like working quickly. So like it's really a really great watch. And like I think that he's done a great job of like turning himself into somebody that you believe in as like a potential future starter, especially, he's like fastball slider against righties, fastball changeup against lefties. So he obviously, kind of has like a game plan out there. And he isn't just, I mean, obviously he's relying on his stuff because it's really good, but he's also, kind of thinking up there as a pitcher, which is, really, really enjoyable to watch.
So here's where the obvious follow-up question is. You've got Savage knocking on the door. You've, in theory, got Ricky Tiedemann coming back next year. Uh, should Gage Stanford be in that conversation as well? I mean, he's in Double
Um,
A now, right?
yeah,
So
well, I would imagine he starts the year at Double A, right? And then if he kind of pitches well again next year, then he probably earns a promotion to Triple A at some point. And then, when you're in Triple A,
you're only one stop
you're
away.
one step away. So, I certainly think that he is in the conversation for 2026, and that I would assume to be like kind of a late season one. But we've been talking about it a lot recently. But the Blue Jays rotation next year is kind of in flux. We'll see how free agency plays out. But as of today, it's Gosman, Barrios, Bowden Francis, it's Alec Manoa, like it's Trey Savage, it's Ricky Tiedemann, it's these guys who are by no means sure things. So yeah, I could certainly see Stanifer kind of being maybe like in this Trey Savage conversation next year where you're like, when is he going to get called up? What's his role? I think he would be like an extremely fun, like short relief guy to call up for a playoff run. You get him back there throwing like 100 or whatever. But again, I think the way that he's shown over the last couple months here. There's definitely starter upside in there.
Makes the Cal Steven trade, obviously Bieber's had his own success,
Yeah,
makes it a little more palatable, a little more interesting. By all accounts, almost sounds like the upside on Stanifer is like higher,
I think so. I think
but
the
the
floor is probably
floor
lower,
is
right? Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah. Well, Steven had a completely huge blow up in his second start with Cleveland, but I was reading that the sun was like super bad and his outfielders let like four fly balls drop. And so he recorded one out and gave up like
Only
eight
minor
hits or
league
something.
baseball.
It's
Only minor league baseball.
watch the games. The games are always like there's always something going on. It's so different from a major league game. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, he was the kind of guy that I wanted to highlight. I think his August was really impressive, and I think like really worth noting and worth mentioning that his double A starts are going to be yeah, kind of fun to see. I wouldn't call them, all that important because there's like 2 weeks left in the minor league season, but certainly fun to watch. So,
Just to keep an
um,
eye on.
you got any other thoughts before we run here because first pitch is rapidly approaching?
Let's get going, baby. It's Blue Jays baseball. It's Jays Yankees. Let's go.
Can I call September the best time of the year, or it's like maybe like third or fourth on it doesn't deserve the song.
September baseball.
It's
It's fun.
it's
It's
fun.
fun.
All right. Well, we are going to run. That is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View podcast. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the series this weekend.